our total preschool foundation aid will come in at $83,800. And as you recall, for preschool students, they're funded at 1/2 the rate of kindergarten on. And that makes sense because it's a half-day program for those boys and girls. So, but that's the amount that we do receive for our preschool foundation aid amount. Getting on a little bit more to a key thing, if you turn to the next page, section 10, instructional support program. Instructional support program. Something we talk about each year when we talk about this is that when the state initiated the instructional support program several years ago, there was an amount, an unadjusted instructional support amount that was identified, and the way it was set up was this: it was supposed to be so much on local property tax, and then the balance of that amount was going to be paid by additional state aid. Now, that amount for Underwood comes to $467,537. What happened as years progressed is the state said, well, we're still going to give some state aid, but we're freezing it at this dollar amount. So when they froze that and additional school districts began participating, you had kind of a double whammy, because they froze the amount, more and more school districts participated, that cut down the amount of additional state aid that went to all the school districts that were participating, and then a few years ago they totally did away with it. So we were just left with what we can do ourselves, and that amount for us, as you'll notice on line 10.27, comes to $365,801. So we're about $100,000 off from what that program was originally intended to do, and so that's something as superintendents we talk with members of the legislature about and so on. Unfortunately, it just kind of falls on deaf ears, but it is a reality. It is a reality of what we end up having to do, having to support, when legislatively it's out of our control. And so it's just one of the things that we're working hard to see if we can get some adjustments on that. Summary of the general fund levies. If you turn to the next page, section 15, it kind of breaks things down in terms of 15.3 talks about the total levy to fund combined district cost. That comes in at a little over 2.2 million. Our instructional support levy, as we just talked about, comes in at 365,801. So the levy to fund our budget authority, and that's that second component we talk about, is it's the authority plus your cash position. That comes in at $2,621,189. Cash reserve levy, line 15.9, cash reserve levy for school budget review committee, and this is our special education deficit. That came in at $139,872 in the 14-15 school year, and we budget for that in the 16-17 school year. So it's a couple years behind by the time we recoup that. Our regular cash reserve levy, and this is something that's kind of a standard number that we've found over the years is a good number for us to be using, $200,000 in that area. Total general fund levy you see on line 15.12, and then you work your way down through that, and then the line 15.15, the taxable valuation with gas, electric, and utilities from line 6.1, you divide what you're wanting to raise in terms of that general fund levy amount with instructional support. That's divided by your total taxable valuation, and then that gives you the levy rate that you're looking at. And for us, it's 10.15536. Then it used to be that kind of would end it, but a couple years ago we did get a carrot from the legislature. They said for the instructional support levy we can use the amount that is the in TIF valuation included there, and that gives it, we have a little over $2 million in our school district that is under TIF. And I think as board members you all have some awareness of what that is. That's money that typically a city will TIF certain areas, And that savings that is realized on property tax, they use to help fund infrastructure improvements in town. For example, in additions we have here in Underwood, to put in the concrete streets, to do the storm sewer, sanitary sewer, to get those things set up, TIF dollars are typically used to accomplish that. And you know what? There are some places where school districts might complain about that. I think if there are places where maybe they go overboard on TIF, it can be difficult. However, I guess realistically, when you look at it, you're doing things that you're encouraging housing development, and housing development means people move into the houses. And in a community like ours, it tends to be people that have kids that go to school. So that's kind of, people need to help each other in that regard. That's, I guess, my philosophy on that. Then if you kind of wrap things up on the last page, it shows you our other property and utility replacements, the management fund levy. We kind of go backwards in this way. We look at the dollar amount we want to raise, and then we calculate what the rate will be. With regular physical plant and equipment levy, this one's kind of funny because on the computer, when Andrea works on this, you can kind of plug in whatever you want, but it'll never let you do more than 33 cents per thousand. So it always will, correct you to what that amount's going to be. And then we have our debt service, and that's for the general obligation bonds for the middle school and elementary expansion. Breaks things down, and at the very end, Andrea has done a recap for you. It shows general fund, management fund, board approved PEPAL, and debt service for a total then of 14.3177. Now, not knowing what state supplemental aid is, what we have done and what we've done in past years when we do this, we calculate an amount that will give us the highest levy rate. Now, almost assuredly, it will end up being less than that, because once the state establishes the state supplemental aid amount, then that automatically recalculates the aid and levy worksheet. It brings it down a little bit lower. But the thing that's critical, and as board members we've talked about this before and you're aware of it, you never want to anticipate what you think they might do, because if you come in too low, once the board certifies the budget, we can't increase it. So once the board certifies the budget on April 11th, we can't increase what that would be. Say, oh, we didn't know that. We didn't think that would happen. So what we have to look at is, okay, what's the highest it could be, and then it automatically adjusts, and then it brings it in lower if that's what the legislature ends up doing. So that's what we've done here, and last year, that is something that happened. We get a final printout from the Department of Management in Des Moines in June that shows us what the actual is. So that's the whole overview. I guess any questions that any of you have. Typically, when we have our budget hearing, we're happy to go over all of this again. But as you're aware, when we do our preliminary overview, we go into a lot more detail and depth than we typically do then. But that's important. Each of you has the booklet. We've done this booklet now for quite a few years, and I know as I talk with other superintendents, I know a lot of them said, wow, I think we want to do that too. That's a pretty good idea. So hopefully it's been helpful for you, and it really hopefully answers all the questions that you might have.
So we're action here, we're going to vote on to publish this.
Right, we just vote on
As
publishing it, so it'll be in the Gazette later this week.
For proposal.
And then the actual public hearing for the budget is on April 11th. When we have our regular April meeting, that's when we have the public hearing.
I had questions. On the management levy, it's flat from last year. Do we increase that for insurance costs?
Well, we're putting in the same amount, and
Oh, you have to guess retirements though, don't
yeah,
you?
we do. Now we have a little reserve in there, and so when Andrea and I looked at, okay, what amount do we need to levy for management, and that's one of the reasons that for people who are participating in early retirement, we like to know that by February 1st. And the reason for that is, that's about time we start working on this budget booklet. And so we want to know what will our liability be for early retirement, so we can factor in that number. Plus, we try to get an idea on what our property and casualty insurance premiums will be. And we've been pretty fortunate on that. Our claims experience locally has been low, and overall, EMC has not been increasing that dramatically, so we feel good about that. But we do have more in early retirement this year because we have 2 teachers participating in early retirement than we did last year. Workers' comp has been pretty good too. We haven't been nipped by that. That's always in the background. It's something that is a concern, but we've been pretty fortunate in terms of workers' comp claims also.
What is the public education recreation levy?
That's a special levy that you can use if
To make parking
for
lots?
funding. Well, no, it's for playgrounds. Yeah, it's playgrounds.
So you play in a parking lot?
Yeah, so I guess you can tell your kids, hey, you kids go play in the parking lot, and say, well, hey, it's what we told them to do, so can we use that to do that, So, probably not, no.
Okay.
No.
That was my question, sorry.
Any other questions?
The, line 5.17,
Yeah.
the dropout prevention, can you explain that to me a little bit more?
Yeah, dropout prevention, a lot of it, what we do is we have time set aside, it's at risk in dropout prevention, so it's not just dropout prevention, but it's at risk dropout prevention. And so what we do is, as we go through our certified enrollment, we identify boys and girls who are, there's a special definition for at risk. And it can vary a little bit, but there are certain criteria that need to be met, and we identify those boys and girls, and that there's a coding that we put in there when we do the certified enrollment. And in our district, we usually run about 40 to 45 boys and girls that are considered in that at-risk area. It's not all just socioeconomic, but it can be other factors too, in terms of physical issues, but a lot of it, and some of it deals with issues in terms of home life situations and so on and so forth. We have a lower rate there than some other school districts do, but still we have needs that we address. And so this helps for some of the programming that we provide to help those boys and girls, and also it involves academic at risk. So we're constantly striving to have all of our boys and girls be at that proficient level. And so what we have is what we call the multi-tiered system of supports response to intervention program. So when we have the boys and girls that are identified, as I mentioned, and they are not proficient academically, and also they're at risk in terms of some behaviors that they've been evidencing, we have teachers that have time every day, but at least weekly, where they're talking about strategies to help those boys and girls not be at risk, and especially not be at risk of dropping out. And I take quite a bit of pride in our district that we have a very low dropout rate. I think last year we may have had one student that was categorized as dropout. We've had some that have been close, but we have different strategies that we use, and then we have different programming, including alternative school in Council Bluffs. We have a relationship with Council Bluffs that we do have some high schoolers that do attend classes at the Canesville Alternative School in Council Bluffs. Yeah.
Any other questions? Item J is discussion consideration of publishing the proposed fiscal year 2016-17 to 2017 budget. Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries. Any other business? If not, I'll ask for motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. We are adjourned.